Bill Boyd from the City of Cape Coral. He is going to be answering all of our questions about assessments, betterment, impact fees. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for educating our agents so that we don't end up being a pain in your butt. Thank you. Awesome. Have at it.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bill Boyd. I'm the Customer and Field Services Manager with the City of Cape Coral. Originally, Holly Goyette, who's the Assessment and Billing Manager, was going to be here. So I found out late yesterday afternoon that I would be here. So I've got a presentation that I share that we complete when the Citizens Academy is going on. And it's kind of like a high-level overview of the things that we do in customer billing services. And I know you'll have a lot of good questions about assessments and payoffs and impact fees, or what we call them capital expansion fees or whatnot. So let me go through my presentation. I'll be quick because I know some of it's like you don't care what our hours of operation are. So with that, if you have any questions at any point, please feel free to stop me, and I'll be more than happy to do my best to answer the questions. So this is a presentation that I complete. And let me start by saying that our mission statement in customer billing services is to provide quality customer service by giving complete and accurate financial management and support in a timely and efficient manner. And I want to show you how we do that. In customer billing services, we do the utility bills for water and sewer on a monthly basis. We have customer service technicians who answer phone calls from customers. We complete the billing after we read the meters. And new construction and utility expansion, I think that's going to be one of the things, Kinsey, that you guys will be very interested in. And finally, in customer billing services, I have a team of folks who work out in the field helping customers with leaks and that sort of thing. We're open the same time City Hall is open. That's Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 4:30. In customer billing services, I've got probably about 7 or 8 people a day taking phone calls, 2 or 3 working at the counter. And we're helping about 300 customers a day by phone, and another 75 or so who come into City Hall. That's in addition to the payoff requests that we do. One of the things that we've developed is an online tool that I'm going to share with you as part of this presentation, and then we'll go over some examples so that you can see some of the payoff things that we do. In customer billing service on a monthly basis, we've got 63,000 accounts. So on a monthly basis, we've got tenants that are moving out, moving in, new owners taking possession of property, so we're changing owner accounts from one to another. On a monthly basis, we have about 1,200 accounts that turn over. We're billing about 290 million gallons of water a month, and my field service team is completing about 5,000 work orders a month. And there's a water bill you don't want to talk about. That's actually one of my water bills. How much was it?
Yeah. And you could also
that was when child 2 was still at home with me.
Right, and you can also touch on, even if your water is not turned on, you're still going to have a bill.
Excellent point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I, and that's different from like the City of Fort Myers, because I know one of the things that the City of Fort Myers does is that customers in the City of Fort Myers, if they're going to be leaving for the winter, maybe they're seasonal residents, they have a way to hibernate their account. We don't have that in the City of Cape Coral. In other words, every month, every account gets billed. And this bill, over on the right side, you see it says water minimum residential. That's the minimum base charge for serviceability for water. That's $17.32. A couple lines down is the minimum charge for sewer, $21.07. And then finally, in Cape Coral, we have dual water, which is not metered. You can use an unlimited amount of that. That's a flat fee of $9.50 a month. So good point, Kinsey. In Cape Coral, there's a water bill every month, even if there's no consumption.
Is that why people use the hoses out of their meter? Yeah.
Out of the pink box or the purple box? Yeah, because that's unlimited, and you can use that for irrigation. That water is not fit to drink.
Yeah. And it smells bad.
It does, it's funky. Maybe, you know, like when they come out, the car has the sprinklers will run overnight. Some of the other things the customer service does is when there's a utility expansion program underway, and right now in Cape Coral, there's a utility expansion project that we refer to as North 2, where about 9,000 properties are going to get water and sewer service, and construction has started on those. Customers in those areas of the utility expansion, if they didn't prepay, the assessment and the impact fees, that will be on their property tax bill starting next year. There was a prepayment option that if they prepaid by a certain date, or there's still a prepayment discount date, if they prepaid by that date, there's a discount for the impact fees.
How much do the impact fees typically run?
$3,300 for water and about $3,200 for sewer.
And you have to pay those once the city water and sewer comes into your neighborhood?
It's not optional. You have to
Not
pay it.
optional. And is there any way to finance your impact fees?
Yes. Yeah, the default option with this utility expansion, the default option is that it can go on the property tax bill. And the impact fees, and at the city of Cape Coral, we call them the capital facility expansion. It's just another word for it. So I'll use impact fees
Cool.
because I think that might be easier for you to understand. There is an option to finance that through the property tax bill. So an annual amount is spread out over a period of 6 years, and that impact fee is included with the property taxes.
And is there a finance charge for that?
No finance charge.
Okay, so 0%, 6 years.
It's on the property tax.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. Thank you.
And one last one. So can a builder parlay that and then just pass it on to the next person, a builder, a small time builder that does a spec home?
If it's in the utility expansion area, yes. But let me give you another example. If it's in an area where there's already existing utilities, then there isn't an option to do that. So, for example, I'm referring to the utility expansion area, which is North 2. But let's say in an existing area where there's already water and sewer, somebody's building on a vacant lot, then no, that capital facility or the impact fee has got to be paid by the builder at the time they're connecting. New service connections, that's when somebody is building a house on an existing lot and they need to connect to the water and sewer. Some of the other things that appear on Cape Coral customers' water bills are the solid waste. You know, the trash pickup is included with our property taxes, as is the stormwater. So drainage is included, and every year the city updates the amount that is billed for stormwater. And right now, I want to say an average lot in Cape Coral is about $77 a year for their stormwater fee.
And do those fees still get charged with or without a house?
Stormwater fees apply even if a property is not improved, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a team of 10 people that work in the field. When we read meters on a daily basis, we bring the data back from the meter reading, and if we see that there is consumption that is more than double the customer's previous average in 10,000 gallons at least, we will send somebody back to the location. Oftentimes that's the customer's first indication that they have a leak. And we do other customer service things, like in the bottom right picture there, that's where there's a location that's just getting the irrigation service. And so my field service rep has installed the irrigation service and is putting in that purple box. When customers pay their water bills with the city of Cape Coral, one of the things that's changed over the last 10 years is we've got a robust number of options for customers to pay their water bills. So many more customers right now are paying their water bills through the e-bill service or through their bank sites or through online bill consolidators like MyCheckFree, that last month, within the last couple of months, we had the first month where the monthly revenue that we received from electronic payments exceeded $1 million. So customers are adopting electronic payments to pay their water bills with the city. That little thing over on the right is we take everything but no magic beans.
Looks like 3 kidneys to me. Right? Says the girl with 3 kidneys.
So this, I think, is something that will really be informative and helpful for you as agents selling Cape Coral. Not so much the e-bill service, but the online payoff information, because there's an abundance of detail there, and we'll go through some actual examples, and I'll show you. So within the last 6 or 7 years, we've contracted with a company to provide e-bills to our customers, so that residents that live in Canada or anywhere else but Cape Coral during part of the year, or maybe they're landlords and they have tenants, whenever they're going to receive a bill, the e-bill service is a great option for them, because when the bill is issued, they get notified of it. And so this has really reduced the number of customers whose bills got lost in the mail, or customers who say, well, I didn't receive a bill. With the e-bill service, it's been a great advantage to us and our customers because, we can, if they say they didn't receive it, we can send it back to them electronically. And enrolling in the e-bill service is easy to do through the city's website, which is capecoral.net. And there's an application online for customers who are applying for water service initially. So if you're selling a location in Cape Coral and you want to give the customer the information they need to get the water account opened in their name, it can all be done online.
You don't have to fax it anymore.
Don't need to fax it. You can take a picture of the lease, attach it to the online application. Awesome. It's become much more friendly.
And when you have a new purchaser moving to Cape Coral, and you don't want a break in the water service from the disconnect of the seller to the connect of the buyer, can you use the sales contract, or do you specifically need a settlement statement?
No, a contract will work.
Perfect, thank you.
Mm-hmm. One of the other things is that a lot of times we'll see it when Lee County, your records are updated and we see ownership changes. We're working ownership changes on a daily basis to verify. Because somebody might apply for an account and maybe they applied for the account as Bill Boyd. Right. But Lee County Property Appraiser records show it's William Boyd. So we'll make sure that it's the same person. We're reviewing the Lee County Property Appraiser's updated records on a daily basis and making sure we have accurate accounts.
Perfect.
This is what I really think will interest you. In selling Cape Coral or representing clients who are investing in Cape Coral, on the Cape Coral website, we have an online payoff website where right now or anytime you can find out what is the balance due on a water bill, on assessments, are there any code violations that are on the property, and it's through this website. So at capecoral.net, you click on I want to, find, and then assessment/payoff.
This is really, really important when you're listing property or prior to writing an offer for your buyers on any property in Cape Coral, so that you can give them an accurate number on either what is owed, what needs to be paid off, and who's going to be responsible on your contract for either assuming the assessments or paying them off at closing. So put it in the MLS also.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Cool.
We'll go through some of these, and if you've got some example addresses, mine doesn't come up because my stuff is blocked off a Lee County record.
Oh, cool.
But if you got example addresses, be happy
Did
to
yours close yet?
Already closed. It already checked.
Okay.
It's already got their name on it.
Okay.
I don't think you can go back to the previous owner, but that's what the hardship.
Well, I'll give my
account.
address so that we'll take a look.
It's already
Cool.
changed names, but it had a hardship.
So once you click that you accept that information is representative, but if you want an online hard copy, you have to read the disclaimer and click the button start, and then it brings up the screen there on the left, which is a high-level overview of a map of Cape Coral. At that point, you can enter the strap, you can enter the address, the block and lot. Well, most people enter by address because that's something that is probably easiest to relate when you're relating it to your buyers or sellers. At that point, when you key in an address, the screen over on the bottom right is an actual display of what the payoff website looks like. What's harder to see, and I want to make sure you're familiar with, is over on the right side of that screen, there are a number of options. It's got legal description, all sorts of information that is available through the county's GIS website. But for your sake, one of the things that you'll be using most often is a line that's about 2/3 of the way down that says loans, and it says payoff report. Yeah.
Yep.
Estimated loan payoff, and there's a link to run a payoff. That's where it's going to give you any balance due on the assessment for a location. Would it help right now if we went through an example?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Some more of this is like, here's what they do. in the
Yeah,
building.
no, we should definitely go through an example. Does anyone have a property either that they have listed that has assessments owed on it, that they own themselves that has assessments owed on it? Jason, can we use your address?
Yeah, of course,
Okay,
absolutely.
perfect, awesome. We're gonna use Jason Rios,
Okay.
Security National Mortgage in the
Okay,
house.
so, click on,
Thank you for lunch. Thank you for lunch, guys.
click on I want to find assessments and payoffs. And then the screen, please read the following. One of the things I will share with you is if you want a printed payoff for a closing, this is also where you can get it. And I'll show you how you can do that.
I like to, if there are assessments to be paid off, or if there's a balance of assessments, I like to include that into your MLS as a supplement, and also upload a copy of it to your app files, just so everyone knows, and is informed the almost exact numbers prior to closing. Are we frozen?
Maybe, I don't see anything turned in here.
There you go.
So if it's new construction, how would this show up here? Because we've had new construction.
Yeah, and when you would click on run report, it would show that there's no balance due,
Okay.
because it hasn't been
Assessed yet, or,
depends on where it is.
okay.
But if it has been assessed and there's balance on assessments, for example, one of the things with some of the recent projects, Southwest 6 and 7, for example, when it came online back in 2012, the capital facility expansion fees were included with the assessment. So prior to that, what customers could do was finance the impact fees after they started construction. So unimproved properties, we didn't require the impact fees. But starting with Southwest 6 and 7, we included the impact fees in the assessments. So if customers prepay that, or if it goes on the tax bill, the impact fees are paid. One of the challenges we face is when we didn't include that and we gave customers the option to finance their impact fees, we had a lot of folks defaulted on their impact fee loans. And at that point, while we could foreclose on properties, we weren't. We were just getting judgments for the unpaid impact fees. So to reduce the number of times that customers weren't paying on that, it's now included with the utility expansion assessment.
So one more, just for clarity with the builder. So if a builder builds a spec home on a North Cape lot that has assessments, they pay the impact, but they can still maintain the assessment on the payout program?
Anybody can.
Anybody
So customers can prepay any portion of those capital facility charges. If they just want to pay the irrigation, or just the wastewater, or just the water, it's their option.
Okay.
So some do, some pay all of it, but some just pay the impact.
No, I can see where it got it. Just push it through to the next one. They all do.
Okay, so did somebody have an address?
Yeah, 417 Southwest 3rd Court.
417 Southwest 3rd Court.
I don't know, Jason, this could be dangerous. 'cause
I
if we have
know.
loans go bad, everybody here knows right where we live.
They
wherever
can
you
find
live.
me anyway, actually. You know what I mean? I'm in Lipa, so I don't have the luxury of being blocked from the system. So
I didn't know I had the luxury.
yeah.
We
And let
had-
me ask you, what's the requirement of that? Is it just I know most like police, sheriffs, judges,
Yeah.
some attorneys. You can
Public
just request
officials.
it.
And so it was kind of dicey. We had a sovereign citizen who just started occupying a location in Cape Coral and wanted the water service and hadn't paid the water bill. And so on advice of the city attorney's office, they said that I could have mine made private. So I just
Oh, wow.
sent the Lee County property appraiser the form filled out indicating my position, and so
Right.
now it's private.
Awesome.
What's the best?
I wish it wasn't, because then I could show, there,
Right.
here's mine.
Right,
Well,
right,
what
right.
is the best way, if our realtors are listing properties and the owner of the property, does have their information private, is the best way to get that from the city to order a payoff?
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the items in the fine print on that click start, in
Right.
fact, right above that, it says if the property that you are looking for is information is not available because of that, click here, and it basically generates a request for a payoff that we send directly to.
The emailed payoff,
Right.
similar to what the title companies receive.
Correct.
Awesome.
Okay, so here we have this 417 Southwest Third Court location.
It's where you go if you need a loan.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
go to the office.
yeah.
I think I sold that duplex right
I think you did too.
there. Yeah, right on Nicholas Parkway.
Yeah.
The one that looks like the one
It looks
family?
like a house.
It's got two, it's got,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that one's nice. I like it. Actually, we use the same builder. The same builder built out of the
I'm
place.
surprised that they're not building more.
You know-
I had a hard time finding comps.
You know, I heard from the builder that the city actually gave him a very difficult time.
Yeah.
So instead, basically, the premise behind his build was it's a multifamily. It looks identical to a single family. It's a, it's a 3-bed, 2-bath on one side, and then I think it's a 2-2 on the other side. But it looks like a single family.
Right.
And apparently,
It's the most beautiful duplex I've
and
ever seen built
he
in
had to
Lee
pay
County.
a lot of extra money. He had to hire attorneys.
Yeah.
There was a problem. Apparently, the
Yeah.
city didn't like it. They,
Yeah.
they were like, it should look like a duplex, and because it was, bigger on one side than the other. I don't know,
It was-
the exact details, but I
I
know.
think there'd be a huge, I mean, that's why my client liked it so much.
Right.
Because it didn't look like a duplex.
Agreed.
Yeah.
They use it for their, mother-in-law, and, I think there'd be a huge market for it, because it's just
Agreed.
something different.
Mhm.
So it seems like it's taking a while. Over there on the right, it's indicating that it's working, because there's going to be a column over on the right that has all the legal description, the block and lot, and then the place where we can run the payoff report.
Spinning.
Was he on Remax?
I think I remember one time
I
I read a
don't know
report on a
what-
property and it said something
what
about
point
burrowing
Nick
owls.
looked
Do they
into.
still have that on there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't
Yes.
seen it in a while.
So burrowing owls, and sometimes like with the golf course, that's the big
Right?
a developer bought and now is not allowed to build houses on, and the city is now considering, there's some places within there where there are eagles' nests.
Maybe a refresh. Oh, this one's on Remax one.
So, quick question on that with the burrowing owls. So, is it, you kind of hear conflicting reports that, if there are owls on the lot, you absolutely cannot build. But can you pay to have them relocated? That's that's been up in the air. I've heard a lot of different explanations for that.
I'm not 100% sure. The Department of Community Development has got somebody who oversees those, and I think that there's an option to relocate the burrowing owls. There's a tremendous expense associated with it, but it does give
Sure.
folks an option
Right.
to develop. There are other constraints when there are burrowing owls. For example, there can be no construction within a certain, and not only construction, but work. So if you're building a house that the water service line is going to be within a certain distance from a burrowing owl on an adjacent vacant lot, we might have to reset where we put the service line in to get far enough away from the burrowing owls.
Wow, that's crazy.
Hey, Jason, was it 417?
Yes,
Southwest
yes,
Third?
417 Southwest Third Court.
That was close.
Don't go memorizing that now. CT.
Recalculating.
Worth.
Lake Worth, how did that happen? Okay.
Maybe you're too new.
Yeah. Or maybe Cape Coral is expanding their jurisdiction and we don't know about it yet.
Really expanding. That's so weird.
Can you type owner's name in that box, or is it just address?
Just, well, there are other ways we could search. But when I first pulled it up, was that the place?
Absolutely.
And it wasn't displaying the column that has all of the information that I wanted to share with you.
There we go.
There you go. And then what? Show more.
Am I doing it the way that you?
Yeah, I don't know why the column isn't appearing.
Yeah, usually it pops right out,
Yeah.
all right.
Is the screen set at zoomed in? It might have to zoom out, maybe.
I am not the IT girl.
No, just hit Control minus.
Oh, yeah. Oh, don't do that. This usually doesn't it pop down here?
Yeah, or over on the right.
Right.
Kenzie, click that blue circle. It's an attribute too.
What does that say?
Base map gallery. Print, legend, query. Layer list.
If you don't mind, what we'll do is, on my presentation, I've got
Yeah.
what the next screen would be. So he just volunteered to use his as an example. I've got a static example of what one of those looks like when it works the way it's supposed to work.
Cool.
So, let's see, let me go back to this. No. Okay, so one of the things that, even though we've seen this before, one of the things that Kinsey brought up was with the properties that are not readily available, you can click, there's a link on the bottom of the disclaimer before you click start, that if you want to pay off on a property like that, if somebody is buying my place, you could click to agree with the disclaimer and then request the payoff.
Right. Does that payoff change on a month-to-month basis?
Yes, it changes. It could change on a daily basis. So with the 63,000 accounts that we have, one of the things that is included on this payoff website is that there's an owner's water bill on the location. Now, if there's a tenant's water bill, that's not reflected on payoffs. But where there's an owner's water bill, because the city exercises a Florida statute that allows us to have a lien on the location for an owner's unpaid water bill, that monthly water bill will be included on that.
And it'll also be included into closing costs. It will be broken down to the day of closing, and if there's an outstanding balance at closing, it will show on the settlement statement
Correct.
as a cost to the seller.
So if that column is working the way it's supposed to, and you click on the estimated loan payoff, there's a link to run a report. If you click on the run report link, then over on the right is an example of what the screen will look like. And at the bottom of this screen on the right, it will show that there's a Southwest 6 and 7 irrigation assessment and what the monthly amount is for that, what the payoff is. Now, for realtors, one of the things that you may be interested in is if you're representing a buyer, you may want the seller to pay off an assessment balance. So if it's on the property taxes, it's going to show you the annualized amount on the below the picture of the property. So for example, the irrigation assessment annual amount for that property is $154. If you wanted to pay off the entire balance due for that irrigation assessment, it would be the $1,018 or whatever that is. But the total payoff is always on the right. The annualized amount will be on the left. Now, that will give you a good idea of what balances are due currently. If you've got a property under contract and you want to get a payoff for a closing, there's also a link where you could click to submit a request to get a payoff. And we will send those. We're doing about 100 a day of those. And we've consolidated the systems that we use so that payoff information request form, that's the online form that you would use to submit a request, because it gives us your contact information, make sure we have the right, we pull the strap number from the site that you were just looking at, so you don't have to populate that. And then you fill in that information, and when you click submit, even though it says please allow 5 to 7 business days, Jeanette is working those on a daily basis, and we're turning probably 95% of them within the same day.
I get them back within like 5 minutes usually.
She's awesome.
Yeah,
They're
they're
back
quick.
right away.
She's awesome.
Wow.
You know, over the years in my time with the city of Cape Coral,
How long have you been with the city?
Okay, good question. About
Yeah.
almost 11 years.
Okay, so back when I had my first title company, we used to fax in our requests, and it would take 7 to 10 days to receive them back faxed. And you had to fill them in by hand, and they'd come back all crooked.
We filled
and
them
that
in
was,
by hand,
yeah,
too.
and you filled them in by hand, and
Yeah,
that was your document.
Carolyn Wise, yeah, Carolyn was the woman who did those, and it was very time consuming because of all the different places that we had to go to get the information. Because the technology is available, and now if you just tell it where to go to get the information, now most of it is just done with the systems that we have in place, from our DFAS database of ownership to our utility billing software to code enforcement software and stuff like that. It's able to consolidate it. So Jeanette's work is very, very easy now compared to what it was 10 years ago, and much more dynamic. So even though it's got that down at the bottom, my goodness, if it ever took us 3 days, call, because Jeanette must have overlooked something.
Right. And everyone is familiar with line 58, page 3 of your as-is contract?
What is it?
Page 158, line 158, page 3. Does anyone know
I don't have that
off the
number
top
right
of
now.
your head?
Seller
Seller, sell, designate, closing agent, pay for owner's policy. Nope, wrong one. Hold on. That's the wrong one. Hold on.
No, you're looking for a box A or B, aren't you?
Yeah, I know. I was on the A or B. Hold on here. I'm going to get it as I pulled up the wrong one. It is page.
I know this box.
I know. You know that box well. Laura isn't here today. She knows that box well. I don't even know whose contract I pulled up here, but it's 32 pages long.
It's where you designate who pays for
Yeah,
assessment.
designate who's paying for the assessments. Did you say seller, seller, seller?
Not on my list, darling.
Not on your list.
Yep. Well, that's a good question, because that comes up sometimes with me. It's like, well, they qualify for the house unless these assessments are gonna be, have to be paid monthly.
The house that Tim just put under contract, I saw it on day one, and we were gonna make an offer on day one by
Okay.
day 5, he put it under contract. We didn't choose to make an offer on that property based on Kinsey's assessment of her qualifying for the loan because of the
Right.
extra monthly payment.
So we're line 177, special assessments, page 4 of your as-is contract. You have 2 boxes you can check. Either seller shall pay assessments due prior to closing, buyer shall pay assessments due after closing, installments prepaid or due for the year of closing shall be prorated, or seller shall pay the assessments in full at the time of closing. Very, very, very important. We've had more than once where there was a property listed in the MLS the realtor had all assessments paid listed in the MLS. The contract had seller shall pay the assessments in full at the time of closing. The seller was not aware that there was an additional $15,000 due at closing. Guess who paid for the mistake?
The realtor.
The realtor.
With the buyer's agent or the seller's agent?
The listing agent for listing it as assessments paid and accepting the contract. And we've been through that twice. So,
That's why you gotta go to this website ahead of time.
go to the website. It's
And request
important.
the payoff.
Or
I always request
request the payoff
in
because
case the website's wrong.
yeah, and if your closing date is 60 days out, 120 days out, the numbers could change. If there's a loan to be paid off on the property, a mortgage to be paid off, and the seller is also now responsible for paying off the assessments, you better make sure that there's enough money left over for the assessments, the commissions, the closing costs. Otherwise, your seller could end up having to bring a check to closing. So disclose, disclose, disclose.
Yeah, I think
Good
that was
info.
it. That was
Good
it.
info, good info.
Very
But
good.
that's what I really would like to do is make myself available to answer questions that you may have about the city of Cape Coral. The question about burrowing owls. While I may not be the best person to answer your question, I can certainly direct you to where you can find the best answers.
What does it cost to remove a burrowing owl so that you could, is there a cost or do you move, like how do you remove, like I know we also have monitor lizards in Cape Coral, like a monitor lizard removing a burrowing owl, probably not,
They
you know.
could actually probably work together. I feel like those monitor lizards could probably take care of the owl situation on the property.
Hey, we could probably get them all.
Just saying.
But is there a I love the burrowing owls and I think they're absolutely adorable and I used to have them when I lived in Cape Coral. I had them in my yard. But is there a cost to remove them? Is there a process? I'm interested in knowing.
The answer is yes to both.
Okay.
I don't know the details of that.
Okay.
That's something that
That's a different
through the
division.
Department of Community Development,
Okay.
they have somebody who works with the burrowing owl programs that are
Okay.
available. So I'm not familiar with it because it's not something that, even if there is a cost associated with it, it's not a cost that the city, that Customer Billing Services bills. You would have to get a permit to have the owl removed. And what the question is how much is the permit and what does it actually cost to have the owl relocated or whatever?
And if the owl is nesting, because you're not allowed to do anything.
There might even be
nesting.
requirements for if it's
Yeah.
mating season for the owls or something. So
Okay.
there are semantics of that I'm not familiar with. But
Okay.
I will tell you that through the Department of Community Development.
We
Folks
had
in-
a burrowing owl class once.
Really?
Yeah, we did. I have to bring that back around. Absolutely.
I-
What about
I
the,
think-
is Tara still here?
Yep.
Can you, Tara just had a deal where the assessments were placed into a hardship status.
Okay.
And so they were not actively being paid
I
on,
didn't have to pay a dime.
yeah.
And they said it was below poverty level. First thing I did was go to Dana. I'm like, what is this? Have you ever
Right.
seen this before? She's like, no, I haven't seen it before, ever.
But so was it added on to the payoff when the property sold? Or
My
did it
seller,
get
my
transferred?
buyer agreed to, he's also my seller too.
Right,
Now that
okay.
he bought this property and he agreed to still pay like 11 and they paid that first portion. Like it should have already been up to that standard.
Okay.
So they accepted from here on out and then they paid before.
Okay, so it was kind of what was deferred. That's what the seller
8,000
paid.
something.
So the seller paid what was deferred throughout the hardship, and then the buyer assumed the
Correct.
remainder. Okay.
And the city has a program that hardship program is available for folks who own properties that don't have the means to pay the capital facility expansion charges or the assessments. But that doesn't mean that there's no requirement that it be paid for the property. It's simply deferred.
Okay.
Surprise.
What about What about
he
the
had
cost?
3 brand new cars in the garage, in the 3-car garage.
When they
What a
are
hardship.
qualifying for the hardship,
like, I'm a
they have to
hardship.
requalify on an annual basis, and we see that. We see certain income criteria that they're not meeting, and when they fall off of it, they have to catch up with it. But yeah, it's absolutely something, because the city, I will tell you that I think there's probably 60 or so in the city right now that have hardship deferrals.
Okay.
So while that's a small number, when you consider the total, it's still something that could happen, because maybe the folks who had a hardship move or move on, or whatever happens, and that balance due becomes due on the location. So keep your eyes open for it. It is included in the payoff on the
Okay.
website.
Yeah, when we saw that, we kind of just looked at each other, because that was one that we had never run into yet. What about, so you have a new expansion area, the water and the sewer, it's coming in. You can roll off those costs onto your tax bill. You already said you can roll off the impact fees at a 0% interest. What about the entire assessment?
Also,
Also at
the default option for
Okay.
customers, because everybody in the utility expansion area is assessed for the services
Correct.
based on the area.
And it's based off of the size of your land.
Yes.
Okay, so if you have a single house and that house is sitting on 6 lots, instead of paying 20, what's the approximate cost
So
here?
if
Let's
the
get into
cost
some
for the
numbers.
assessment and impact fees totals $20,000.
Right.
That's for a typical 2-lot site.
80 by 120. If you're 85 by 125, does your price increase?
Could be slightly higher. Yeah.
Slightly higher. Okay.
I know for
And if you have
triples.
a pie shaped, if you're on a pie shaped lot and you're a little
It's based on the area of the
area of the lot. Okay, so, so regular 80 by 25 lot, north, in the newest expansion area, the water and the sewer, they're coming in tomorrow, and you're gonna be hooked up, what is that cost?
The total is probably about $20,000.
Okay.
There's a prepayment option that is still an option for customers in North 2,
Okay,
where there's a discount on the total that would be billed. Otherwise, again, the default option is that it goes on the property taxes annually,
okay,
where the impact fees are amortized over 6 years
okay,
and the assessments are amortized over 20.
okay.
How long
And-
do you get the discount up until it starts?
Well, there was a earlier discount. The current discount period, which is there's not as much of a discount available. Current discount period, I think, ends in July, at the end of June.
And when's it coming in?
Services are under construction right now in some places.
And does the price change for commercial lots?
No.
Is it the same size?
Okay, and I have another question. So this brings the water and the sewer to your street. Is there an additional charge to install that line that goes from your house to the street?
Yeah,
And
that-
who does that? Is that an independent contractor? Is that the city of Cape Coral? And is there any way to finance that?
Excellent question,
Thank you.
Kinsey. The cost to connect your property to the city service, the city brings it to what we refer to as the service point, which is usually in the utilities right of way, 10 to 12 feet from the edge of the road to go into the property. And then it's the homeowner's responsibility to have a plumber connect their services to the city's service point. And so plumbers, knowing there's a utility expansion underway, plumbers start soliciting to, hey, we'll be happy to install it, and it is, and typically they have a cost that is how many feet they have to run from
Okay.
your property to the service point.
Do you know that approximate cost offhand, so we
It
can
varies,
prepare?
it varies from contractor to contractor.
Okay,
I recently had one, Kinsey.
Okay.
And the contractor bid it at $2,000. I think that after a short negotiation, we wound up at about $1,700 for the hookup.
right. I remember I had a Southeast Cape Coral house. This is probably going on 7 or 8 years ago, and I believe I paid somewhere in the $1,400 range,
Yeah.
but that was yesterday's prices also, so I couldn't
will
give.
add also that I had called 3 different plumbers And one of the plumbers being one that was soliciting in the neighborhood with some signage just completed by so-and-so XYZ. And the two plumbers that were not working in the neighborhood were quick to say, you're probably better off with the guy that's already tooled up that's out there.
That's good.
One of the significant costs associated with that is within Cape Coral's a reality is that cost of connecting is very often as expensive as it is because there's probably a septic system there that needs to be abandoned.
That's what I was going to ask next is, do you just leave the septic? Do you have to crush it? What happens to that septic tank that's in the front yard?
It's a poop treasure chest.
What happens to the poop treasure chest?
It has to be either crushed
Very true.
or removed.
Crushed
No
or
way.
removed?
I
Nobody
thought
does
they just
that.
stayed there. For
Yeah,
some
nobody does that. They all leave them.
It has to be
Yeah.
crushed or removed.
And the Lee County Health
Crushed or
Department
removed.
inspects.
Plumbers charge a separate fee for,
Yeah.
they crush and fill it.
Yeah.
And I believe that they have to do a affidavit inspection.
Well, Lee County Health Department actually inspects them.
Yeah.
So there's Lee County Health Department charges, I think, $75 to do a septic
We
abandonment
went
inspection.
through Lee County, it was Cape Coral property, and we did an affidavit inspection. They allowed an affidavit inspection.
Okay.
Of course, that plumber's put himself on the line if he would ever be discovered that he didn't comply, lose his license.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, this is being recorded, so I don't want to discuss that.
And then so when you're on well and septic, you have no water bill and no sewer bill.
That's correct.
Correct. All you have to do is maintain your septic tank and maintain your well system and spend money on salt. And now with the expansion, with the new properties coming in, how is sewer charged?
For the assessment?
Well,
the
not for
water
the
bill?
assessment, on your monthly bill.
Okay.
Because like talking from going from no bill
Mhm.
in these areas to going to a bill so that the realtors here can properly explain to their clients what their increased cost of living is going to be.
Excellent point. My son lives in North 2, and
Okay.
he has city water. And
Okay.
he thinks it's great. He says, Dad, my water bill is only $25 a month because he doesn't have sewer charges yet.
Is he on one of the betterment areas? Because
Nope.
we haven't touched on betterment yet.
No,
And that's
I'll
fun.
get
That's
to,
fun.
I'll get to betterment. With North 2 coming through his area, he will get on his monthly bill sewer charges. The $21.07 a month is the minimum sewer charge, and then the volume charges for sewer, based on the amount of water that passes through the meter, the sewer charges are $9.04 per thousand. So my son's got a family of 4. His water bill right now is about $35 a month. When he gets sewer, his water bill is going to be about $110 a month
Okay.
because the volume charges for sewer and the minimum charge for sewer.
What is betterment? When you see betterment on there, what is that?
An example of betterment is in an area where there is not currently city utilities, somebody may wish to develop a place, whether it's the Home Depot on Skyline or something like that, where a builder wants the city's water and sewer service to be in their area. So what happens is, wherever the closest point where the city can tie their service into that betterment project, the city will install the service, and then anybody that's between the service point that the city had, and I'll use the Home Depot because
Right.
Home Depot on Skyline is an example of that.
Right.
Anybody then who is between the Home Depot and where it was before is in a betterment area. So water and sewer is available, and they can connect to it. And at that point, they pay the capital facility charges, and then instead of an assessment, it's a betterment. So it's a different way of referring to their costs associated with it.
Okay, I know in some of the older areas of Cape Coral, like I used to have some duplexes on Diplomat, which was a main road, but not a lot of commercial, and they were all betterment with city water, city sewer, and I believe it was paid off probably 20 years ago. So how does a situation like that occur? I'm just
They may have
curious.
built it to the diplomat school.
Okay.
And so when something out there was developed, it needed the city services. And so
Okay.
they extended city services from wherever the closest point it was available to that.
Okay,
And
cool.
that, because of the timing of that could have been the diplomat middle school.
Okay, awesome. That's good information to know.
And so they do not have to hook up to the water or sewer.
If they're in
Only
a
if they
betterment
want
area?
to. Right,
If they're in a betterment area, they do have to
they
connect.
do
They
have
do.
to, okay.
And they have to pay for that connection
Yes.
themselves.
And it's just, it's the same concept as an assessment, but because it's not a city project, it was a project that a developer, for one reason or another, wanted to. And so, something like that always has to go before city council so that they approve it, because it will affect other residents in that area.
So what happens if you're in one of these new expansion areas and you refuse? You don't want city water, you don't want this additional bill, you don't want to pay the plumber to hook up, you are anti-assessment, like solar, right?
Off the grid.
You want to be off the grid. What does the city do to you in that situation? What are the consequences?
It's a violation of the city's code to not do it.
Okay.
So,
Is
you know,
it-
the actual code in the city's code of ordinance is chapter 19-2.5, which says that there's a requirement that you connect. So you don't want to connect. And it typically goes, there's a code violation notice issued, a time frame in which the connection has to be made,
Okay.
which is usually 6 months.
Right.
Then once they haven't connected, the city will proceed with getting a notice of violation, and it goes before a special magistrate at an evidentiary hearing.
Okay.
The special magistrate makes a ruling on whether or not the property needs to comply, or how long they have to comply. And then once the special magistrate makes a ruling, if they still don't come into compliance, there's a comply by date that is prescribed in that ruling. And if it still doesn't comply, there's a follow-up hearing. And if the property is not in compliance, the special magistrate can impose a daily fine
Oh,
for not complying.
okay.
I have one more for that too. So there's a compliance, let's go back to, you're currently putting some assessments into North Two. They get completed, so there's a day on the calendar the city pulls out, they're done. What is the compliance date for the homeowner to hook up? Or do they have 6 months after your completion, 1 year after your completion, 30 days after your completion? They must have some form of a grace period.
I wish everybody would ask this question so that I could share the answer. When construction is underway for a utility expansion, it doesn't all open at once. One of the key criteria for the service to be available is that the sewer lift stations, does everybody know what a lift station is?
You might as well explain it while
Sewer has to work.
Okay.
The sewer has to work, and the city's got gravity feed sewer systems. So once a sewer line goes so deep, it has to be elevated and pumped up so that it can fall down
Flow again.
to the next. So once lift stations are online, then an area of customers can get the service. My department sends the customer property owner, a certified letter saying you have 6 months to comply with the requirement to connect to the existing water and sewer service. And then, if they haven't connected at the end of 6 months, we're not initiating a code case at that point. We send reminders 30 days before the end of the 6 months, then we send reminders at the end of 6 months, and then we send reminders 30 days after that. So,
Yeah, well, I was on a buyer side of a transaction that was in that, I'm gonna call it your grace period to hook up. The seller was, of course, avoiding that by listing and selling before the drop dead date, I'll call it. And we learned through title that we were not going to close until that hookup took place.
yeah.
So this, for all you to know, these transactions are driven by the city, that until someone steps up and pays, nobody gets to transact.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you don't get to run under a rock with it.
Very important if you're listing property in one of the current expansion areas or soon to be expanded areas. Do you have a map on here where you can show? And is there a place we can go to see exactly what areas are done, completed, if there's a certain location or area that's the first or the next or the last to be done?
There's a map.
Okay,
And-
cool.
And it's
Maps
on
are
the city's
awesome.
website, capecoral.net.
Perfect.
And I'm in the swamp here with the internet.
Is it really
Wait,
spinning?
let's see.
Okay.
Here we go.
What happened to that little old lady that didn't want to hook up to her electric? Remember
Yeah,
that?
I'm kind of curious about that. That's where my question came
Yes,
from.
the off the grid lady. She moved out. She moved out. An investor bought that duplex that she was living in. I mean, she had some really crafty things going on, and you know, if she was in the wilderness somewhere, I would commend her for the resourcefulness. You know, like the gutters ran into a big 55-gallon drum where she could recover the water and use that to flush the toilet. At some point, the city said, "Look, we know," and we capped the sewer, so she could then no longer use the sewer. She hadn't paid the water bill. She was blatantly disregarding. So she was using the city's sewer service, never having paid for any of those things. So it got to the point where it was so egregious that code enforcement said, "What can you do? She's using the sewer, so we can plug the sewer." So we plugged her sewer. She continued to live at that location. I think Fox News ran a story about her and how she lived there without the water or sewer. She stayed there for probably another 6 months, and then the property was vacant for years.
She ran out of buckets, pretty much.
The property to the hook up.
Ah, that was nasty.
I bet. Something
At least up to the assessed value.
Yeah.
You know,
She
if there's
was,
any equity, there's things you can do.
creative,
Right.
to say the least.
That just makes me
But
feel
if you do
like.
that for one person,
So-
then you
Gotta do
have
it for
thousands.
Kinsey asked the
thousands
question
of
about
people
where
wanting
can
to
you
do it.
find,
Yeah.
like a listing of where utilities are being expanded. So on the city's website, if you click I want to find, it's my utility extension area, and this should work for any address in the city of Cape Coral. So when you display this page,
You can put the owner name too. Can you just put the owner name?
put what?
It says landowner name.
Yeah, we'll try by that.
I've got an address that you can use. if you
Okay,
want.
go ahead with an address.
It should be a vacant lot, 912 Northwest 9th Avenue. I know that they were really close to the project starting, if it hasn't already.
Mm-hmm.
912
912 Northwest 9th Avenue.
Northwest. I didn't put Northwest.
You gotta put do you have to put APE?
No, I think it's just AV.
North Four.
Water
it
service
says.
not
That's it.
available.
Yeah, right now it's not available. The utility expansion area for that is gonna be North 2. So if you wanna see when North 2 is planned, I think we have that, I know we have that here too.
This is North 4, isn't it?
North 2 is not one of future areas. So North 4, this 912 Northwest 9th Avenue is a future area. And so I think that this is gonna be like a color-coded map of what areas are planned.
Oh, yeah, everyone should have
I
one
know
of
that
these.
was like maybe one street over, they were getting ready to do the utilities, and this was a vacant lot, and basically my seller wanted to try to get it sold before she fell into that gray area.
Yeah, so that North 4 area is right here.
And when is North 4? Is that one of the current areas?
No,
No. When is that expected? Are there expected dates, like Dubai, like?
you
There's
think it'll go
no-
North 1, 2, 3, 4?
Well,
What the city has done is gone by density of the area.
Okay.
So improved density is a big driver
Okay,
for
cool.
what, where we'll go with next. I don't know. My guess is that if I had to speculate, North 4 will probably be within the next 5 years.
Okay. And are the people that are hired and contracted by the city to do this, are they from our local area?
They're from all over. So in
Okay.
North 2, there are 13 separate contracts for installing the utilities. And
Okay.
I think there are 6 different contractors.
Okay.
Local contractors get actually preference if they are capable or their bid
Okay.
is acceptable. So in the overall scheme of choosing
So-
who the contracts are entered into with,
So this is bringing more jobs and more employment opportunities to our area.
absolutely.
Do you know on average?
I don't know the economic
Okay.
development impact
Okay,
of that.
cool.
But a good question for Dana Renette or Karen Ramos, who's
Okay.
on economic development.
Cool.
Anything else?
Yeah, I have a question. So I have a family that we helped them with their purchase a couple of years ago. They're in North 2. Roads are ripped up. They're getting they're in the process right now, and maybe they're confused. Maybe I'm confused. They're under the impression they have to come up with about $8,000 up front, and then it's still going to be an enormous, $1,500 or $1,800. They're on a triple lot, so then they're under the impression there's going to be an extra $1,500 to $1,800 a year on their tax bill. So they misinterpreted that. There's no upfront.
It sounds like, the upfront costs associated with it, those are, the impact fees are financed by the city. The default option is it goes on the property taxes, so they don't have to come up with any money. For the sake of planning, they should plan on their property taxes going up, and they should have already received a notice to say, here's how much your annual assessment amount will be that will be included with the property taxes. The only other costs that would be associated with the connection would be whatever the cost of the plumber to abandon the septic and install the services.
If you run the tax calculator on LIPA with a proposed closing date with the utilities expanded in the area, will that update properly to include the assessments added to your tax bill?
Probably not right now, but I'm not sure about the
That
Lee
would
County
be-
property or the
Okay.
tax collector's
Well, it's
website?
LIPA,
Lee-
yeah.
Okay. Probably not. Not until we send it to the tax collector for them to add would they include it.
Okay,
So we notice them, and they are
Right.
aware that we're going to be putting it on the property taxes or adding it, and so our resolutions to include it have gone through city council's approval.
right.
I don't know, and I'll get back to you with an answer on that one, because that's something Holly will know.
Okay, yeah, and that would be something great to, if it's not a feature now, to make sure it's a future feature, so that when estimating loan costs or yearly tax bills, because it's pretty spot on, even though it disclaims right there that it's an estimate, it would be great to know the estimates, including the future assessments.
Because of how dynamically we work
Right.
with Lee County Property Appraiser, I'd
Right.
say yes, but I don't know that for
Yeah,
sure,
I
so
know.
I'll check
Yeah,
with Holly.
I don't need you to say yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good questions. You guys are pretty sharp.
Right?
The I think if I left you with something that is vital for you to know, it's that payoff website is there.
Right.
One of the things that's not included there is if somebody has let the property go and there are code nuisance abatement amounts, that payoff website does not include what the amounts are, and rather it will refer you to call code enforcement, because they're daily fines and out of the scope of our control with what we bill typically. You'll have to call for something like that. But because of the dynamic nature of how the systems we have interface with that payoff website, it's pretty good. And I heard somebody say, well, I will request a documented payoff because we're updating it. Somebody's actually reviewing it. That's fine. That's fine, because one of the things that we have is we could see by address if we create a payoff that we're sending back to a customer, and we see we did one earlier today, and just go take that information and import your information to it. So the systems we have in place to provide you with the information are pretty dynamic. But the payoff website is really, really useful and something that you should genuinely be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when writing a contract. Or listing.
Any other questions?
Questions, anybody?
This doesn't have to do with assessments, but how accurate is the flood zone information?
Pretty accurate.
By my flood zone?
Yeah, I think the DFAST is interfaces with the city's GIS, and the flood zone stuff should be very good.
Has there been any flood zone updates since Hurricane Irma?
I don't believe so.
Well, you're Cape Coral. I'd be more interested in Lehigh, since, yeah, there was a lot of flooding after Irma.
Any suggestions?
Anybody? Anybody? Questions? Suggestions?
straightforward. I think the
I think
website's
everyone,
great.
is
Everything's
everyone
good.
pretty informed on,
Yeah, I think you asked all the appropriate questions.
I had a whole list. And every time I
Yeah,
came up
no.
with something new.
That's great.
I
I've got
tried
one
to,
question.
yeah.
Is there any plans that you know of to put infrastructure in where the 7 islands are yet? Because I know they're working on a project
Oh,
out
yeah.
there.
I think that's gonna be part of North 3. 7 Islands would be part of North 3.
Yeah.
Does everybody know where 7 Islands is? I'll zoom in.
Is that where your law is?
No, that's where they're gonna have, I mean, I think they still don't know exactly what the project's gonna be. If it'll be condos and retail and restaurants.
Oh, okay.
This is the 7 Islands area right here.
Right. If you're driving down Old Burnt Store,
Oh, okay.
right,
Oh,
yeah, it's the islands to the left.
Do you think North 5 will be going in before North 4?
I do not. I think North 4 might be a little more densely populated, but
Okay.
they'll be very close to each other.
Okay.
And, you know, the way the city rolls, they probably won't be at the same time because it's not contiguous. One of the things that's really fascinating to me is that North 2 is the current project, and if you see, it's in purple there. And it skirts Pine Island Road to the south. Look how far it goes from west to east. It goes from
Right.
a little bit east of Del Prado all the way west to Old Burnt Store Road. But it's contiguous, and there's a good, I mentioned 9,000 properties there, 6,000 of which are developed, so you know, there will be a good impact with the city deploying the water and sewer service there. Plus, existing services are easy to get to when they're there. So, I don't know, stay tuned for which projects will be
Yeah,
next.
and overall, do you think this is 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years? Can we not even guesstimate?
No, I would guess and say all of this should be done within 10 years. But if you asked me that 10 years ago, I would say this should all be done in 10 years. But the climate changed.
Right.
The economic climate changed, and our city council, we had plans for Southwest 6 and 7 to be developed in
Right.
like 2008, 2009, 2010, and it continued to be kicked down the road. It wasn't even
Well, because the
the
real
economy.
estate market
Yeah.
and the economy dropped, and no one could afford
So
to pay a plumber.
Yeah, I remember those city council meetings, people were throwing a fit. They
Yeah.
didn't have the money to pay
council
it.
members
Yeah.
were not anxious because their constituents were speaking up and saying, I'm not going to be able to send my kid to college. I'm not going to be able to do this and that.
Right?
And when you look at the costs of Southwest 5, those assessments were more. They were
Right.
like $25,000.
Yeah.
And so construction costs came down. Southwest 6 and 7 were very good, favorable compared to Southwest 4 and Southwest 5 utility expansions. So it will depend on the times, I say.
Right.
I know the city had recently approved the new, cheaper seawalls. But what was ever determined with the people that had damage from Hurricane Irma, and if they can afford to fix it? Is the city doing anything? And if they're not fixed, is that going to be a code violation? Is there somewhere to check that? What about these people that are on the water? How do they check that to make sure there's not a lien or code or something
Yeah.
for these seawalls?
Lot there. To summarize what's going on with seawalls, right now the city's not enforcing. If somebody's seawall has collapsed, unless it's compromised the integrity of the house at the location, they're not enforcing the code requirement. You know, for example, I was talking to the manager of code, and if somebody's seawall and dock have collapsed and they have nowhere to put their boat, they're not really aggressively pursuing the requirement that
So
they
you
can't
can
park
put
a
your
boat
boat
in
in
their
your
yard.
yard then?
If your seawall
What a
is damaged.
concept in
Just don't
Florida.
put it in your driveway.
Yeah.
Not in your
So,
driveway.
but overall, I don't think the city has approved
Okay.
that yet. Right now, conceptually, there is the prospect of having seawalls that are not the typical concrete seawalls, but rather a vinyl or some sort of
That'll be
material.
pretty.
But it would still have concrete in it, but it would just.
I just got my little Cape Coral
Corrugated.
letter thingy, and it said that the city had approved
Surface.
the different type of seawall.
Okay.
Okay.
So, but I know that there was one of them that had like corrugated or something.
Yeah.
They didn't like that. But the other vinyl one was okay. So basically, if they have a house that's on water, the realtors need to go make sure that the seawall's not falling down. So
Sure.
that's something you need to make
Yeah.
sure is in your
Right,
contract.
and make sure that your buyers and your buyers are having seawall inspections done on their waterfront properties. Are there any, for people that did lose their seawalls during Irma or had crumbling seawalls or issues, are there any types of grants from the city to assist in?
The city told the owners to take care of it.
Okay,
Yeah, unfortunately, no.
They're not
Okay.
gonna do crap. It's your property, you pay for it.
right.
Yeah. There's also liability. You know, if your
Right.
seawall crumbles and your neighbor has a brand new seawall and theirs starts collapsing,
Sure. So
that can't be
Right.
left
you
to
got
the
neighbors
city
who
to
are
pay
trying
for
to
it.
sell their house.
Right.
The next door neighbor to them has a collapsed seawall.
Right.
One of the other potential prospects is there might be funds from FEMA available for collapsed seawalls through individuals. Not through the city,
Right,
but perhaps through Federal Emergency Management, FEMA.
okay. Awesome,
Scary.
it is,
Scary thought.
it is.
What kind of insurance could you
I
possibly
was
have
like,
that would
that's
cover
what
that?
Is there-
Or how much would it cost if you could?
Right.
Right?
Right.
Well, is there any sort of seawall insurance
Right.
Yeah.
out there?
That would be covered under homeowners.
It's not.
And I mean, it's not exactly flood insurance, so is there
Right.
seawall insurance?
I mean, maybe other structures, but you would probably have to have a rider. I'm sure it would be, the amount that you pay. When's the next time that's going to happen? Another 15 years? So if your policy is another $300 or $400 a year over the next 15 years, that's half the cost of just
Sure.
putting in a new seawall.
Who writes it? And so, yeah.
Write it yourself, save your money.
Yeah.
It's tricky.
Yeah,
Cost of home ownership.
yeah. Awesome. Anything else on assessments, seawalls, City of Cape Coral, Northeast, Southwest? Betterment, impact fees? Hardship? Did we cover everything we came here to learn? For the most part?
That was pretty good. Everything.
Awesome, awesome. And
Bridge tolls?
what's up? Go ahead.
Bridge tolls?
A bridge toll?
It's free to leave Cape Coral now, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Welcome to Fort Myers.
Don't let the door
I think
hit
they
you.
put it the wrong way though. I think they should have made you pay to get out and then free to come in.
Right.
That would have been smarter.
Right, and then we'd like to thank Kinsey Prescott and Jason Rios for bringing everybody lunch today. I was gonna wait till you had that cupcake in your mouth.
I knew it. I could see it in your face.
I know. I
somehow.
was like, oh, she's got frosting. Let's introduce her now. So if you want to go ahead, thank you so much, Bill, from the City of Cape Coral for being here and sharing all of your information. Absolutely wonderful to have you, and I'm sure we'll have you back again, either you or Holly. And Kinsey, thank you. Kinsey with an I, not me. Thank you so much for lunch. If you want to give yourself a quick little what you do and why you're here and how you can help our agents and
Yeah, just real quickly, we're a direct lender, so we have a lot of unique loan programs, and we do, all the standard conventional FHA, VA loans, but we have a little bit of some unique products too. We have a lot of investor loans, which I'm working on some right now. We also have a down payment assistance program, which I'm working on a deal with Tara with that right now. And that's a pretty good one. It'll cover the down payment. You get 6% seller concessions and a 620 or above credit score, and then come to the table. You would think with nothing, but unfortunately it's a higher price rate. So they're still going to end up coming to the table with a couple thousand, but if you have that one right client where that's the only way they're getting it, it's there.
And
So-
what are typical requirements on that? Because technically, this is coming back to kind of a 103, 104% loan after you include your closing costs. So it kind of reminds me of
not quite.
2005.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
up there. It's 100.
Yeah.
It's 100. But the way this one works is it's really just a tiny little secondary loan
Okay.
for the down payment.
Oh,
And what's nice is all these other down payment assistance programs have, you know, requirements and this and that. It's really the credit.
okay,
They can, everything else just has to meet FHA guidelines. They can
Okay.
pay everything off early. They want to pay that secondary loan off in 5 years, they can. They want to pay it off in 10. You know, there's even a forgivable one, although the rates seem to be higher with that one. So
Okay.
somebody with a 640 credit score, this is going to work well with. And it's tricky to get seller to pay that much concessions, but even you have somebody that has, you know, they have 8,000, they just don't have 16 for the down payment and closing costs, you know, that's where this can jump in and help.
and is there a maximum loan amount?
Just the FHA.
Okay.
So it just writes the same as FHA. So that's one I've gotten a lot of response on lately.
Okay, and didn't the FHA loan limits just increase?
It did.
It
It
did.
did.
So-
So what is it now, Jason?
You sure it did? Cause I want to say
260?
no, it's
For the four.
275, and then I think they
In
bumped it
Lake
again.
County
So
and Naples.
Yeah,
was
so
And
up.
that's
look, it
just Lee
changed.
County, and
It's like-
yeah.
Yeah,
And Collier County,
295.
yeah, Collier County
It's
went
like
up to
340.
yeah,
I think in Collier County, but even that's
right,
it's all relative. You know what I mean? It's difficult to find something decent for 340
right.
in Collier
Oh,
County.
we can do it.
Yeah,
We
Have them call
also-
us.
absolutely.
We
Living
also
the
have some
dream.
really good, like foreign investor loans. You know, 35% down, bank statements, and good credit score, and then they're good to go. You know, which is, you know, what I'm working on with a client right now.
Yeah, the good thing about that is you can do it in an LLC as well.
Yes.
No credit score, no income.
Yes, and the
Ah.
guy I'm working with now is in Canada. His
Correct.
taxes were done in Singapore. He's in New York and Florida. You know, 3 different businesses, but you know, some are here and some are not claimed, and it's a whole mess. So it's just, you know, much easier to go that route.
And what's the typical rate on a no income LLC type of loan?
8.99?
Okay, which is still lower than hard money?
Yeah.
Ken?
Yes, it is.
Is that lower than hard money?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Just a little bit, and
A little
it's you know, you're
Right.
closing in a week or 2 with that.
okay.
You know, it's
Okay.
it's quick and easy. So, but I was saying we need to meet up because I, you know,
Absolutely.
and one day I'll do a whole presentation on all our loans. I've got one, a lid for every pot. Just got to know what lenders got, you know, what
Cool.
you need. But definitely we have a lot of unique programs. So I know most of you, but if